Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurling. I'm joined tonight by Seamus Brady to discuss this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship Final. It's amazing we have got to that stage, but we are here now. It is Cork versus Tipperary, All-Ireland Hurling Final. Of course, there is the LGFA Semi Finals to look at as well. Two very interesting games there between Meath and Kerry and Dublin and Galway. And then there's Premier Junior Semi Finals in Camoke as well, which we'll discuss at the end of the show too. But first of all, Seamus, we talked about a few weeks ago that the games are decreasing, but the more important games are kind of rising. It's so good now we could talk about a single game and so many facets to it. And thank God, because we have so many facets to discuss.
Yeah, it doesn't get more important than this, man. And buzzing to be on the show, buzzing to jump into this game with you. I mean, we've been doing podcasts for years and years, and I think in terms of an All-Ireland final preview, I don't think we've done one for a game more important for Cork, have we? I think if we're being honest, I think this is probably the most important one we've done for Cork because, I mean, the All-Ireland final last year, I don't know if we did that one together. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it was with Aaron, actually.
But even then for last year, it's like, for last year, that was a final that you got to where obviously you were, on the crest of a wave and it felt like it could have been your year. But even when Cork lost last year, like we were at the game together last year, that All-Ireland final, right down in the front row behind Brian Lowen. And even though Cork lost that day, I remember thinking like, that's definitely not the end of this team. Like they definitely, I would have been confident that day that they'll be in another All-Ireland final before this is all said and done. But now that you lost that final, I feel like it's much more important that you come out the right side of this one. And I think Tipperary are the team going in with nothing to lose in this one. So big weekend coming for Cork. And yeah, looking forward to jumping in because, as you said, the games are increasing in importance as the year goes along. It doesn't get more important than this.
Exactly so, and we will discuss the All-Ireland Hurling Final in detail in a sec, but we'll go to the weekend games first. And there was one kind of story to discuss, and that is, of course, Paddy Tally leaving Derry. Well, he resigned as Derry football manager as well after the podcast last week. So I think, Seamus, everybody could kind of see this coming, considering, the kind of vibe of the Derry camp at this present moment in time. And Paddy Tally didn't win a game all year. I think he only drew about 3 as well. It was just a very, very poor record from him. And ultimately, they went out in the group stage. They got relegated from Division 1. It's been a terrible year for Derry. Yes, performances at stages were decent enough. But even after a season, I still wasn't shocked that he was gone.
Yeah, I mean, right from the start, it was strange with the Paddy Tally era. I mean, like, if you go right back to the start, so obviously Mickey Hart leaves, that whole situation ended really, really bad. And it was seen as a bit of a dodgy one for anybody to pick up. Like you weren't going to get given much rope. Mickey Hart didn't get given much rope. Paddy Tally came in and they hired him so late. I firmly believe they wanted Rory Gallagher from the get-go. I firmly believe they wanted him. And they took so long waiting. And there were so many rumours that Gallagher was going to go back. I think it was a Carol Kane or someone who leaked that they were looking at him and there was a massive backlash to it. So I think they were left in a position where they didn't really know stick or twist. And they ended up going with Paddy Tally very late when you consider how long they had to appoint. I think, was it Mickey Hart left in June or July of 2024? And when did they hire Paddy Tally exactly?
I definitely remember we were doing podcasts in terms of the club championship in provincial starting, so it must have been November.
It was like, but it was very close to when the league was starting. And I remember thinking you had that much time to hire someone, and managers had come and went from other counties and they'd still beaten you to the punch in getting their guy in. And then when Paddy Tally was there, you had like Garrett McKinless going on the GA social talking about how great a manager Rory Gallagher was. Brendan Rodgers doing interviews talking about how they'd love to work with Rory Gallagher again. It was just a really weird atmosphere around. It was like the players were still wanting Gallagher to come back, or half of them were still wanting him to come back. And for that reason, I doubted whether Tally ever had, I really doubt that Tally ever had the dressing room the way that Jim McGuinness has the Donegal dressing room, Jack O'Connor has the Kerry dressing room. There's no way Tally had the Derry dressing room like that. There's no way he had the players willing to go that extra mile for him. Now, Derry were good this year in terms of the way that they played. The performance level in most of the games was actually quite good, but they were missing that extra spark that they had under Gallagher and under Mickey Hart in the first period, during the league and everything like that. Because there was a sense in that era, especially under Mickey Hart in the league in 2024, there was a sense that Derry truly believed that they were the best team in Ireland. There was a sense that they truly believed, deep down to their core, they truly believed that they were going to win an All-Ireland that year. And once the wheels came off, they came off fast and the train derailed quickly. And there's a sense this year that they've lost that belief. Because we were talking about this on multiple pods. You're saying Shane McGuigan's performances were still good. Conor Glass's performances were still good. Brendan Rodgers' performances were still very good. So why are they not getting over the line the same way that they were previously? And I feel like when the game goes to that crunch, like it used to for Derry, instead of finding ways to win, like they did when they won back-to-back Ulsters and the Division 1 title, instead of finding ways to win, they're finding ways to lose. And they're falling off in that final quarter. And I feel like if they had somebody like a McGuinness, somebody like, somebody special like what Mickey Hart was for Tyrone, if they had, ironically, but if they had someone like that who had a special relationship with the team, who could get them to run through brick walls like that, I think they could be competitive again. I think that Derry still are. If they get the right management team in, I still think they can be a force to be reckoned with next year. It's just a question of who they hire. I think they should just let the Gallagher ship sail. That's gone. Even if he comes back now, it's going to be so unbearably controversial for them. It's just going to be a circus if they bring him back. They're better off now moving on to the next manager. And when that next manager comes in, get behind him. Get behind him. I agree with Peter. They just need to forget about that. That's an era that is now gone. So I agree. I wouldn't say go outside. I would say go inside. Derry have enough legends. They have enough people who know their stuff when it comes to the management. I wouldn't go for a Tony Mack or Aaron Kernan because they are very likely to then jump to Armagh, and you wouldn't want that. If I was Derry, I'd go with someone in-house. If they can get Anthony Tohill, he'd be the dream.
Damien McAlornan.
Damien Macca, yeah, very good option as well. Paddy Bradley, again, is another shout. He's someone who has managed, up and down the country. He's had a spell managing Donegal. Would he be capable and would he command the respect of that Derry team? You would imagine so. And you look at Tony Scullion as well, the work that he does with Ulster GAA, he'd be a fantastic coach to have in there. There's a lot of very good options for Derry. In my opinion, avoid Gallagher and avoid going outside. Go inside the county this time. Go for someone who will command the respect of that team and they can all unite, because what we saw was when the team was united, they were a force to be reckoned with. So, to be honest, Tony Scullion is a legend. I had him on the podcast. He is an absolute gentleman. And if he managed Derry, to be honest, I'd be rooting for them to win the All-Ireland. That's how much I like Tony Scullion. He's such a genuine human being. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. But yeah, people like that, if he went in there, he'd command the respect of the team. If Paddy Bradley went in there, if they got Anthony Tohill in there, Mackerlane as well to some degree, yeah, just that's the way that they need to go. They have the players, in my opinion, to compete for an All-Ireland. Like Derry beat Armagh in that Ulster final on penalty. So if Armagh went and won the All-Ireland because they had someone as charismatic and as good as Geezer there at the wheel, Derry need their version of that.
Yeah, exactly. So that is without a doubt. And a few more comments coming in here about, from Peter again, about Andy McAtee floating too in terms of finding a manager's job. But Gavin Devlin is tipped for the Loud job. That's another thing as well after Ger Brennan left. Obviously, he has been Mickey Hart's right-hand man for so many seasons now. Would that be a good appointment for Loud, do you think? It's been rumoured heavily.
It's been rumoured heavily, and I think if they want continuity, he would be a good one to have because he has been involved throughout the levels there for Louth, and it would be a bit of a seamless transition. But again, Louth are now at a level, in my opinion, where they don't need to have someone who could just jump ship to another team. Like, in my opinion, because you're now at the level when Mickey Hart picked you up, you're in Division 4. You were nowhere near winning Leinster titles. Mickey Hart got you up to Division 2 and to a Leinster final. Then Ger Brennan comes in. The Loud players don't take a step back. But what happens? Like if Ger Brennan goes to Dublin, are you really surprised? Did you really not see that coming? You have no right, in my opinion, to be irritated by that. Now, would Gavin Devlin jump ship the way that Mickey Hart did to Derry? Probably not. Because you would imagine if he's Mickey's right-hand man, why did he not go with him to Derry in the first place? But in my opinion, yeah, that type that Peter's saying there, Paddy Keenan, Aaron Hoey, or the Louth under-20 manager who just won the Leinster Championship with Louth and got them to an All-Ireland final. What?
Fergal Real.
Yeah. I'd be genuinely saying Louth now, in my opinion, need to back themselves. Go with a Louth man who they can build a project with. I just personally think whenever you go outside the county, you're leaving yourself open to be robbed. Especially when you're at the same level of these counties now. And if Louth want to be a team that, you know, go and win Leinster Championships the way that they did this year, in my opinion, time to start punching at this weight.
Yeah, exactly. So, and managerial merry-go-round goes around in the wintertime, obviously, but we will move on to the big game itself, the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship Final. Cork against Tipperary, Croke Park, Sunday, 3:30, live on RT2 and BBC Two Northern Ireland. And before we get into the action, no lads, before you ask, I don't have any tickets. So please stop. Well, you aren't, well, to be fair, I'm not being DM'd as much, but if you're thinking about doing it, don't, please. I don't have any tickets. I am not part of the Cork County Board. Please do not DM me about tickets. But anyway, Seamus, away from, well, we could talk about that, I guess. It starts like, I know obviously the memes going around.
You can say as well,
exactly.
you can say, I got you the ticket for last year's one.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. But I'm absolutely grateful for that, obviously, as well. But have you seen, just before we get into the game itself, have you seen the memes online for tickets, like raffle winners being like chairman, the secretary, the manager, the football team or whatever?
And the winner is me. Like Father Ted, like that episode of Father Ted and Father Dougal, where he's like, number 74, and Dougal's looking at the ticket upside down. And he's like,
I think actually hilariously, Seamus, it was actually number 11.
Oh yeah, I remember that. And then Mrs. Doyle was like trying to buy the number 11 ticket, and they wouldn't sell it.
I remember your man was saying that betting ruined his father, and he bought like 2,000 tickets.
Yeah, I remember that. Oh, good.
Anyway,
classic.
The raffles and everything, they're taking over social media. I have entered a few. I've entered a few competitions. I entered my own club raffle as well. So
I wonder how some of them are, because I seen one GA page on Instagram that looks like it's only launched, and they were doing a like giveaway of 2 All-Ireland final tickets. I was like, you definitely don't have the clearance to be doing that. We'll see what happens. That's what happens around All-Ireland Final Day. And to be honest, it's a real showcasing of how in love we are as a nation with All-Ireland Final Day. And isn't it great that we're all so desperate to be there? In my opinion, I know you released how the tickets are allocated. In my opinion, they should be even more heavily tilted towards the 2 teams that are involved in the All-Ireland Final. In my opinion, Croke Park has 82,300 people. In my opinion, I'd be saying at least 75,000 of that should be Cork and Tipperary fans.
75,000? I think that's a bit much.
To be allocated to Cork and Tip? No.
Yeah,
Cork and Tip. If you made 82,300 Cork and Tip fans, they'd sell the place out, no problem. In my opinion, when it's All-Ireland Final Day, you should be doing everything in your power to tilt it towards the 2 fan bases, that you get as many of them there. If you want the best atmosphere. Do you know what I mean? You want the best atmosphere.
Exactly.
You don't want, and I'm speaking as someone who was there last year. I didn't have a horse in the race last year, but I was there because I was working at Croke Park at the time. I was working for the GA Museum, so I had the tickets that I gave one to you and one to myself. An amazing occasion, but if someone pointed the finger at me and said a Cork fan should have been in your seat, fully agree. But it's an interesting one. I'd love to see how it can be done, because when I see Cork fans, like diehard fans like Dan, who can't get a ticket, like you wonder, is there a way that we can do it that the most diehard loyal fans do get tickets? Because look, we got absolutely annihilated, but I know Dublin fans who literally go to every single Dublin hurling match. And I was thinking to myself, if we somehow beat Cork, which obviously we didn't, but if we somehow beat Cork, I was like, there's no way that the people I know that go to every game, there's no way they're going to get a ticket for the final. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, because then every Tom, Dick, and Harry will want 70,000 is good. What is the number now, Matt?
I'm looking now. I'll look back at my post. Actually, the information actually came from Daniel Hussey, so huge shout out to him on X over this. Yeah, this is the post. I got 47,000 views. Obviously, no wonder why, because people want to wonder where the allocations are going. So it's 59,212 for county allocations, 10,528 for premium and corporate. Season ticket holders, now worth noting there, Seamus, season ticket holders would be Cork and Tipperary fans, I imagine there, 2,594. So
I'd imagine a bit of premium as well is included in Cork and Tip fans.
I would say so, yeah. Term tickets, schools, sponsors, staff and subcommittees. Our Corla and GA presidents, 800.
Okay.
But is that acceptable, do you think?
To be honest, I wouldn't know the ins and outs enough to comment on that. I don't know how many people there are there that would need a seat. I would imagine when it comes to the Ard Collier, like, people would want their family to be there with them and everything like that as well. And if they're the people running the GA, probably do deserve to have that day out on the final with their family there. The sponsors as well, like if they're sponsoring the GA and they're in that, it makes sense for them to be there in the Ard Collier. And then obviously the Uachtaráin Heron and the Taoiseach, like, they need to be in there too. So to be honest, I wouldn't know anywhere near as much as you do about the ticket allocation. But it would be interesting to see, like, just who exactly is there. I think it's interesting because obviously premium will be included to some degree. I'd be interested to know the corporate boxes, how many of them go to Cork and Tipperary fans as well, how many go to how many premium tickets go to Cork and Tip.
Yeah, I'd say there'll be quite a few as well. It's worth noting as well. But it looks at things, press and TV and radio are separate. So press, I would imagine, is mostly, let's say, in Tipperary, you have the Guardian, you have Tip FM, you have other stations like that, or newspapers. In Cork, you have the Echo, you have the Examiner, you have the Southern Star.
Red FM.
So, though Red FM as well, absolutely, 96 FM. So you would have, but then again, TV and radio 74 and press is 258. Okay. So they'd be kind of, Cork kind of journalists there as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, again, before your post went out, and shout out as well to yourself and to Daniel Hussey for making that public, because genuinely I didn't know, and I did always wonder what the allocation was. But in my opinion, and I've no doubt that the GA have the same mentality about this, if it's an All-Ireland final, if there's 82, what the comment there that Peter said, if there's 82,300, you should be looking to get the maximum of that to Cork fans and Tipperary fans who are going to absolutely make that stadium a cauldron and an incredible atmosphere. And to be fair, they do get that pretty well. Like, when we were there at the final last year, the dominant colours was red and blue and gold. It was everywhere. And it did feel like, it genuinely in the stadium, it did feel like there were 40,000 Cork fans there and 40,000 Clare fans there. It felt so 50-50. So they're probably doing it right to some degree. But My heart goes out when you see fans who are diehards, who've literally been to every game home and away, who then can't get a ticket to the All Ireland final. And like those are the fans that, adore the GA more than anybody else in the world. And you'd wonder, like, is it possible to have like a system in place where you can, like, the way the tickets go up on Ticketmaster and everything like that? Would it be possible to have a system in place? This is just speculating, but would it be possible to have a system in place where if you went to X amount of games, it bumps you up the list somehow? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like
that should be there, yeah. That should be definitely.
if you have a system that proves I went to every league game, every championship game, I follow this team home and away, that it bumps you up the list. Therefore, you are more likely to get a ticket rather than someone who doesn't really give a shit and is kind of just going for the day out.
Yeah. It's some interesting questions in the comments here. Peter Griffin is saying here, is it tighter in the press box? To be honest, Peter, I've only been in the press box for the All-Ireland quarterfinal or preliminary quarterfinal between Dublin and Cork in the football, and there was hardly any media there. Obviously, it was a prelim quarterfinal. Would I say it was tight? It wasn't tight then, but it might be for an All-Ireland final. It probably will be, to be fair. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'd imagine it would be.
Yeah,
I guess.
I'd say so.
Because, sure, that would be another way for people to be at the game. As well.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So
Peter,
yeah. I don't know.
He's asking another question in here. How many tickets do the really big clubs get, like SARS? Yeah, that's a very good question. I genuinely don't know, Peter, but I think what it's done in clubs, I might be wrong on this now, but I think the Premier Senior Championship clubs in Cork, including SARS, of course, get the bigger amount of tickets, the larger amount of tickets. Then you have CDRA getting the second most, and then Premier to Meath and so on and so forth. So I think that's the way they do it. And Liam is saying in here, it is a community organisation, so tickets are allocated in that manner, but tickets do end up filtering back to the participating counties. It's always been that way. That's a very good point. Very good point. Peter's saying in here, that's a really good, great point by Seamus and on merit and proven. Exactly. But the tickets, I think we'll go on about it for ages, but we will get into the actual game. Seamus, this game, it's exciting in so many ways considering it's
you might as well pop the title back up there.
Yeah, exactly. But
you might as well go on, pop it up back.
I may as well. Let's go. There you go. All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship Final, Cork against Tipperary. For anybody reminding, we were talking about the game in terms of the tickets, but we'll leave that part now. But in terms of the game itself, James, before we go in depth, first All-Ireland final between these two counties. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Absolutely crazy, because when you look at the history of these two counties, the legends that they've had and the eras that they've had, like Cork had the era of the Christy Ring, the era of the Jack Lynches and the Jimmy Barry Murphys, and Tipperary had the era of the Jimmy Doyles, John Doyles, Nicky English, like these legendary names. And to think that of all that time, Cork and Tipperary have never met in an All-Ireland final. Well, obviously there's the caveat that the system was a lot different back then. They had to go through the Munster Championship, and if you lost in the Munster Championship, you were knocked out. So it technically wasn't possible for Munster counties or Leinster counties or Connacht counties or Ulster counties to meet each other in an All-Ireland final. They had to do it the same way the football used to do it, where you had to win your province and then go in and win the All-Ireland against the champions of the other provinces. So then they changed it in 1997. It was the first time that two counties from the same province met in an All-Ireland final. That was Clare against Tipperary, a repeat of that year's Munster final, and that was Clare's second All-Ireland under Ger Loughnane. But even from that era, it's been remarkable watching since 97. Cork and Tip have gone in almost complete opposite ways. That whenever Tip are good, Cork are in a bit of a lull. Whenever Cork are good, Tip are in a bit of a lull. And just randomly now this year, they've both risen to the top at the same time as each other. Like if you want to go through the gears, we have Cork rising under Jimmy Barry Murphy there in 99 when Tip had a quiet year. Then Tip bounced back under Nicky English in 2001. Cork had a quiet year that year. Then in the 2000s, the mid-2000s, you had Cork absolutely surging under Donald O'Grady and John Allen when Tip were in a bit of a rebuild. Tip's rebuild finishes in 2009 when they come to the fore under Liam Sheedy. and they have a few great years there where they won in 2010, where they won in 2016, and Cork were very much in a lull. That was the year of the strikes. That was the year of players not playing for the team and everything like that. Cork make a surge in the 2020s under Kieran Kingston in his final years, and then under Pat Ryan. And Tipperary had some of their darkest days under Colin Bonner and Liam Cahill. But all of a sudden, they've turned it around under Liam Cahill. The success that they had at under 20s level, under 21s level, minor level, and the rivalry that they've had with Cork at that level, which we will talk about the more we jump into these games. But they've all culminated in being here for an All-Ireland final on Sunday. And finally, we have an All-Ireland final between Cork and Tipperary. As I was mentioning, two counties who have so much history, heritage, prestige when it comes to hurling. They are, you could argue, along with Kilkenny, the most important counties to the game since its establishment. Like, they have been unbelievable. Like Christy Ring, Jimmy Doyle, John Doyle, Jimmy Barry Murphy, Jack Lynch, Nicky English. Like, these lads are legends in the game that are irreplaceable, and I think you have to put them right up there. And for them to finally meet in an All-Ireland final, we could be in for one of the best All-Ireland finals we've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be hard to top after last season, obviously, with the Cork and Lair game, but we will see. Peter Griffin saying here, Liam Gordon, definitely the right call for the ref. I think Tyler shunned since the Munster final. That is a shame, because obviously Thomas Walsh has done well, I think, at the championship, and he did do well against Limerick. But look, Liam Gordon is the referee, and we'll see how that all plays out.
Tyler, what Tyler showed me was Tyler could be rattled in the Munster final. Do you remember at halftime in the Munster final when both management teams tried to get to him? Because he let everything go in the first half. Both managers tried to get to him at halftime. Then all of a sudden in the third quarter, he's calling fouls for every touch on a player. And it was clear that whatever was said to him at halftime got to him. And you can't have a ref like that for an All-Ireland final who managers can get in his head. I think Liam Gordon is a lot better at that, to be honest.
We'll have to see if Seamus is proven right. But we will go into the deep dive into the game now, and we will first of all look at the rebel county, Cork. So we will look at their journey to the final and their scores in the media assets that I find here in the stream. So we'll start off with Cork's journey to the final, their second All-Ireland final in a row, obviously. So the Munster Senior Hurling Championship, they drew against Clare in Ennis. I'm not going to say the name again because that'll be for the blooper reel. 224 to 321 in Ennis. Then beat Tipperary 427 to 24 points. But I know it's a previous game, and I know we'll talk about the head-to-head section in this podcast. But Darren McCarthy was sent off before the game even started. So that is a bit of context for everybody there. They did lose to Limerick in the T West Gaelic grounds 326 to 116, and then beat Waterford to save their championship 225 to 122. Then beat Limerick in the Munster final, their first Munster title since 2018. Beating the Treaty County 130 to 227. It was a draw after extra time, but then Cork won 3-2 on penalties. And then that absolutely superb display against Dublin, where they hit 7 goals and 26 points to Dublin's 2 goals and 21. They've averaged a score 324 per game and conceded an average of 223 per game. Look at scores, and of course, Patrick Orban, the man who still hasn't got an All-Ireland medal, amazingly so. He's top of the charts with 3 goals and 50 points for Cork this season in the championship. Brian Hayes has 5 goals and 8 points. Alan Connolly has 4 goals and 9. Decky Dawson there with 112 as well. Darragh Fitzgibbon with 14 points. A major talking point going into the final, Seamus Harvey. We don't know if he's fully fit or not. We don't know if he's going to be even in the panel. We'll discuss that in just a little tick. Tim O'Mahony, 3 goals and 4 points there as well. Shane Barrett with 1 goal and 9. Shane Kingston, very impressive off the bench with 6 points. And you can see the scores down there. This week on the Star Sport podcast, Seamus, we were lucky, absolutely privileged to have Dermot the Rock O'Sullivan on the podcast this week. And he was talking about in the journey to the final that Cork's turning point, it wasn't the Dublin game where they hit 76% shot accuracy. It wasn't the Limerick game where they got over the line against Limerick in the Munster final and won a trophy. It was the game they lost against Limerick because teams started to change and Pat Ryan started to learn more about his team and they improved from there. Do you think that game was the turning point of Cork's season?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you can't really argue with someone like The Rock. I mean, that's a hell of a guest to have on. What an absolute legend he is. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking down that same route as well. When you put up the results there, I was thinking the most important game of that list of fixtures that led them to the All Ireland final was the Waterford game, because they were straight off an absolute tanking against Limerick. And the Waterford game was a game where Waterford were going to come in determined to put the final nail in Cork's coffin and save Waterford's season as well, and eliminate Cork from the championship and save themselves. So for Cork to get over the line in that game was really, really important. And you saw when me and you were chatting about it before the game, we saw on Dan's TikTok, you saying like, this is a really, really dangerous game for Cork. The fact that they got the job done, albeit not even playing at 100%, they still got the job done and kept themselves alive. And they learned a lot from that game against Limerick as well, because that was almost easier. I remember me and you saying this, that was almost an easier defeat to take than Limerick losing the Munster final the way they did to Cork. Because once you have a result like that, where it was clear that everything Limerick touched that day turned to gold and Cork couldn't get their game going at all, it was almost easier to take the like, oh, just this game's a write-off. And we'll just focus on the next one. Just get through this one, focus on the Waterford game, and then we can go from there and get into the Munster final and run this back against Limerick. And they were fantastic in that Munster final. Match Limerick step for step. And to be honest, I was expecting that they would be in this final against Limerick. Like from that day, I was expecting. I couldn't believe that we beat Limerick with 14 men in the quarterfinal. And let's not talk about the rest of our season. But I have to say, I was very impressed with how they rebounded from that game, because a humiliation like that against Limerick wasn't going to be easy to bounce back from. They bounced back from it really well against Waterford, got the job done, and then their performance in that Munster final was absolutely superb. They stood up to a team that had ran them over only a couple of weeks earlier, proved that they were to be taken serious as All-Ireland contenders, and got over the line in a thrilling Munster final. And to be honest, the way that they handled the game against the Dubs as well was really, really impressive, because Limerick, they learned from Limerick's mistakes. And in my opinion, it was clear Pat Ryan had said to the Cork lads, because if you watch that Dublin-Limerick game back, Limerick were very passive in the first half. Every chance they would get, they were quite happy to tap it over the bar. They weren't going for Dublin's throat the way that Cork did. It was clear that Pat Ryan had said, if we get a chance, go for it. Every time, go for it. Like, go for the jugular, because if we can establish dominance over this Dublin team, because what happened was in the Limerick game was the longer we just stayed in there, the more our confidence grew and the more we believed we could beat them. And I think Pat Ryan was saying, don't even let them think for a split second that they can beat us. Go for the goal every time. And by halftime, the game was done. And that is something that Cork have also done to Tipperary. I truly believe, again, this final only goes three ways. Either Tip, Pip, Cork, Cork, Pip, Tip, or Cork annihilate Tip. I think that's the only way that this final ends, is one of them three ways. I don't see a world in which Tip hammer Cork. I don't see that. Cork have hammered this Tipperary team the last 3 times they've played them. Do I think that that's going to happen in this All-Ireland final? No. And there's an example that I am going to pull up here. Very interesting example. I want you to help me piece it together. But the 2018 All-Ireland Under-21 final, where Liam Cahill was Tipperary manager that year, in the Munster final that year, Cork beat Tipperary by 223 to 113. Annihilated them. And then in the All-Ireland final, everybody tipped Cork to beat Tipperary because they'd beaten them in the Munster final so easily. And Tip came back and won that final by 3 goals and 13 points to 116. Now, playing for the Cork team that year was Decky Dalton, Niall O'Leary, Mark Coleman, Dara Fitzgibbon, Robbie O'Flynn, Shane Kingston, Tim O'Mahony, Ger Millerick, Jack O'Connor, and more. Playing for Tipperary that year was Jake Morris, Robert Byrne, Owen Connolly, Brian McGrath, Ger Brown, Mark Keogh, Connor Stakelum, Barry Hogan, Jerome Cahill, and more. So there's a little nugget of interest there, because you have so many of the same characters who were involved in quite a similar storyline, which ended very positively for Tip. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes.
That's very interesting. But at the same time, I was hearing briefly, obviously I don't have the list with me, but I was hearing briefly the names there, Joe Brown, Robert Byrne, all them. They're not on the tip panel anymore. Whereas when you look at Cork,
Robert Byrne?
Shane Kingston is. I don't think he's there, no.
I swear he is.
No, you're thinking Robert Doyle.
Sorry, Robert Doyle. Jesus, apologies. I was like, I swear that guy's up for an All-Star.
But the point I'm trying to make is Cork have Decky Dalton, Shane Kingston, as he named there, Jack O'Connor even came on against Dublin and got a point. Like, they are all still in the panel.
Yeah.
So does that say something about the Cork team? They all kind of stick together, whereas Tip are kind of chopping and changing. They haven't done so obviously this season, but in the last few years, is that kind of a case in argument?
It is. I think Cork have done a far better job at pivoting to that younger generation than Tipperary have. I know that Tipperary have done a good job this year. Players like Andrew Ormond, Darren McCarthy, Oisin O'Donoghue, they've been given a lot of responsibility this year. And Owen Connolly as well has absolutely shone. Jake Morris has become a leader of the team. But they hung on to that era of the Mars, the McGraths, the Shane Buchanan's. And look, you can't argue against relying on them lads because they're some of the greatest hurlers we've ever seen. But what that leads to is when Shane Buchanan does tip over the hill and retires, and we've seen it with the Dublin footballers, that, there were legends in that Dublin team. You can't move past them. But then, talented youngsters like Kieran Archer, like Aaron Byrne, who won under 21 Footballer of the Year in 2017, doesn't get a look in with the Dublin seniors. And then when the years come later where Paul Flynn and the like have retired, and you turn back to Aaron Byrne, he's gone to the States, or he's not playing anymore, or do you know what I mean? Or his level has decreased. Like, Cork did a better job at pivoting to that younger generation. I think because they probably had to a bit more than Tipperary did. And Tipperary then went through a couple of years where they couldn't make up their mind whether to go with the new or stick with the old. And that led to some very bad days for them. But I think Cahill has done a very good job with it this year. But Cork, the fact that there was a very realistic prospect of game time with the seniors led, I think, to a lot more of them sticking around.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a few comments in here. Sean O'Malley saying, I believe the final will be better than last year, but potentially the GOAT. We'll have to see what happens. Peter Griffin saying, in your opinion, what will Pat Ryan be concerned about from a tip perspective? We will discuss that when we bring on tip scores and journey to the final. We will discuss that in detail. Rutter's saying here, Cork won't hammer them, but I expect them to win by 4 or 5. The hurt from last year was spurred them on to victory and a well-deserved All-Ireland for Patrick Horgan. Sean O'Malley saying in here, Alan Connolly is fairly quiet in the big games in the past, but when he's come up against top man markers, he has potential to explode in games and has scored a brace against Tip in the past and a hat-trick.
Against Dublin.
And a hat-trick.
Hat-trick against
Dublin. Against Dublin, but he got a hat-trick against Tip last year.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that was pretty good as well. There was a question in here from Peter Griffin as well. From me, I think was, Matthew, we're at Cork Media Press Night. I wasn't, Peter, but there was a lot of pieces in this week's Southern Star. It's out tomorrow. There was a lot of pieces in this week's Southern Star. I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's a piece about Patrick Collins, about his roots in Ballinhassig. There is a piece on my preview to the game. Kieran McCarthy looks into how West Cork has contributed to Cork hurling over the last few years or so as well. There's a tactical breakdown as well. There's a few different pieces. Obviously, there's the interview with The Rock as well on the podcast. There was a lot of content to the Southern Star this week. So pick it up tomorrow. Pick it up tomorrow if you are in and around the area, or buy the e-paper. That'd be great for our digital guys over there as well. But we will get on to the other county, the Premier County in the All-Ireland Final, and it is Tipperary. Brilliant achievement, obviously, to get to the final for Liam Cahill's men, and we will look at their journey to the final right now. So, in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship, they drew against Limerick first day out 2-23 apiece, which was deemed a very, very good draw. Then against Cork, a step back. 4 goals and 27 points to 24 points. But as mentioned earlier in the podcast, Darren McCarthy was sent off before the game even started. Against Clare, they won 480 to 221. But the next few games is very, very impressive in so many facets for Tipperary. They beat Waterford 130 to 121. Beat Laois 332 to 18 points. Beat Galway 1 goal and 28 points to 217. And beat Kilkenny 420 to 30 points. That's 420 to 30 points, no matter what the score said at the final whistle in that game. An average score for Tipperary of 2 goals and 25 points and conceded 221. But before we get into the score, Seamus, I have to mention this point before we get into the scores, but we'll discuss this point in a sec as well. Since the Clare game, after the Clare game, Tipperary have conceded 3 goals. 1 against Waterford, a first-minute goal from Stephen Bennett when they were kind of off guard, and 2 against Galway, one of them in the last minute where I think they were kind of on the beach at that stage in terms of the last few minutes. I think Tip knew the game was won. So that is a very, very impressive record for Liam Cahill's men, and they have improved defensively, the whole team there. Look at their scores. Jason Ford has 3 goals and 44 points. Darragh McCarthy, 1 goal and 33. John McGrath, 5 goals and 14 points. Jake Morris has 22. Andrew Ormond, one of the finds of the year, 213. Owen Conley with 13 points. The super sub off the bench, Oisin O'Donoghue with 3 goals and 2 points. 3 goals from 3 sub appearances for him. Willie Connors with 8 points. Sam McFarlane with 1-4. And you can see the list of scores down through the list there. So many things to be positive about from a Tipperary point of view. I know Cork will be favourites, and probably rightly so. They won the Munster Championship, but even though I say this as a Cork fan, I am wary of Tipperary because their defence has massively improved ever since the Clare game. And as well as that, their attack, which we'll bring up with the stats with the 3 full forwards in a bit as well, they are scintillating at the moment and are in brilliant form.
They are, and like I think it's slightly different to Cork and Clare last year in terms of that. Clare had the pedigree of beating Cork in the Munster Championship and everything like that. But it's actually very similar in the sense that coming into this final, all the hype is about Cork. All the pressure is on Cork. And Clare were flying relatively under the radar in last year's final, and now Tipperary are definitely flying under the radar heading into this final. And I think you would rather go into a final as an underdog rather than an overwhelming favourite, because the pressure is on Cork. And if this game goes into the melting pot, Tipperary will feel more of an incentive to go and win it rather than Cork. And Cork might feel more of a pressure of don't lose this. So that tiny little mental switch can make a big difference, especially in a cauldron like Croke Park with 82,300 people there looking at you. Like, I mean, tiny little mistakes can make massive differences there. For Tipperary, what I was saying earlier about what Cork could feel like about the Limerick game is very applicable, in my opinion, to what Tip can feel about that Cork game in the Munster Championship, where Darragh McCarthy was sent off before the game even began and Cork basically canted home. Tipperary will know that's not their best. That's not their strongest hand. That's not the level that they can get to. They can get to much higher levels. They can challenge Cork a lot more than they challenged them that day. Yeah, Peter's point there is really important. McCarthy getting sent off against Kilkenny again. That's 2 very, harsh but silly. Shouldn't be doing that. Should he have got the second yellow? Probably not. And one thing that is very interesting, I think it was Second Captains I heard this, but they were saying whenever someone gets a second yellow and gets sent off, it's actually always like, look at the first yellow card. And it's usually not a yellow card, or it's usually pretty harsh first yellow that then is followed up by a deserved second yellow and a red. But Darragh McCarthy now has got 2 fairly petty red cards that could have been avoided, and he cannot get another one in this final. He cannot. And the thing is, are Cork going to rattle him at the start? You betcha. Sean O'Donoghue will probably go over to him, get stuck straight into him and try rile him up to do something stupid. He has got to be on his best behaviour, because now with 2 reds, he has a little bit of a reputation for it. And if a Cork fella is rolling around on the ground near Darragh McCarthy, could be an inquisition and a quick flash of red. So that's something Tipperary are going to have to be mindful of in this game. If he keeps his head on his shoulders, keeps his feet on the ground, keeps focused, he is a class hurler who could do a lot of damage to that Cork team, especially punishing them from frees and everything like that. Speaking of, it will be interesting to see if they go with McCarthy or Jason Ford. Obviously, Jason has more experience in the big days in Croke Park, more experience getting over the line in All-Ireland finals. And that's another thing that Tip have over Cork. More, you mentioned it on my pod, they've more experience of getting over the line in All-Ireland finals. Noel McGrath has an All-Ireland medal. John McGrath has an All-Ireland medal. Noel McGrath has 3 All-Ireland medals.
3, yeah.
Yeah, like these players, Ronan Maher has one. These players, there's All-Ireland in that Tipperary team. So Cork don't have any. So when that game comes down to the melting pot, like we've seen examples in the past where the wiry old team just knows how to get over the line. And Tip also have the sprinkle of youth in there, like the Andrew Ormonds, and the talent that they have coming off the bench. And the likes of Oisin O'Donoghue and Noel McGrath always comes on at crucial times, steadies the ship at crucial times for Tip. It's going to be really interesting. It's definitely not going to be the walkover that it was for Cork in the league final and the walkover that it was in round 2 of the Munster Championship. This is going to be a different game. I'll save my prediction for later on.
Absolutely, I'm definitely right to do so. I will look at stats averages and just like Peter saying in here, comments. I think Cork lads will go hell it back, especially for hockey. Absolutely, that is definitely going to be the name of the game for Cork. But we will look at average stats now. So these are stats compiled for every single game in the championship for Cork and Tipperary. I didn't do it in the semi-final for Tipperary against Laois. I did do it over the week as well. So all the games are accounted for in terms of stats. And this is the average stats for each, for Cork and for Tipperary. So you look at it there. So goals scored, Cork has scored slightly more there. Goals conceded, Tip conceded less, which is very, very crucial in that as well. It's going to be very interesting to see the amount of goals that Tip do concede on Sunday and what they've learned since the Páirc Uí Chaoimh game where they conceded 4. In total score, Cork have scored more. In total conceded, Tip have conceded less. So again, that's going to be very, very interesting. Misses 4, Cork have more average. So that is going to be very interesting to see that as well. Tip have a better shot accuracy on average. So again, that will be vital in keeping the underdog in the game as well. And the shot accuracy against, it's about the same, 63% for Cork, 62% for Tipperary. You look at turnovers for Tip have actually got an average of 31.41 turnovers, which is very, very impressive compared to Cork's 27.83. Very, very similar in turnovers lost there as well. Puckouts is a massive stat, actually. It's so impressive, especially in a game of hurling. The average puckout win rate for both teams, especially for Tipperary, 68.29%. That's very, very good for Rhys Shelley and his team, I'd imagine, as well. Even for Pat Collins and Cork, 66.83%. Tip do lose more of the opposition puckouts. That's probably well established, considering they let Kilkenny go short, especially in the semi-final. Cork tend to win a lot of the opposition's puckouts, considering they have 40.5%. Considering that's just underneath 50%, that's very, very good for the Cork team. And their work rate around the middle as well. And frees conceded and frees won. Cork have just conceded more frees on average. But other than that, the stats are very much the same there, Seamus. So there's a lot to go into there. I think a main one is the goals in terms of Cork conceding or scoring a lot, but Tip conceding, especially the last few games, as I mentioned. In their last few games, they only conceded 2 against Galway and 1 against Waterford. Tip have really improved at not conceding as much goal chances since that Cork game. Like, they conceded 2 goal chances against Kilkenny. And that is including the John Donnelly shot, which was blocked by Robert Doyle at the end too.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, I mean, the stat that caught my attention was the puckouts. Definitely the opposition puckouts one, because, like, as a Dublin fan, that game in the semi-final against us, I felt like any puck out we hit down on top of the Cork half back line, Rob Downey was cleaning up in the first quarter. And people talk about the goals, and don't get me wrong, like, they were amazing finishes from Alan Connolly, they were amazing finishes from Brian Hayes, Tim O'Mahony, everything like that. But the reality is, when Dublin felt like we were hitting a brick wall and the ball was just coming back every time, eventually the dam's going to break. You're not going to be able to keep out Alan Connolly, Brian Hayes when you're not getting any relief, when you feel like the ball is just coming back at you every time. And we were playing Russian roulette to a degree with the high line and everything like that, and leaving space in behind. But Rob Downey was majestic under them puckouts in the first half. And Mark Coleman was great at sweeping up as well. Kieran Joyce was superb under the puckouts too. And you would imagine for Tipperary, Rhys Shelley does bomb it every once in a while. And I feel like if Rob Downey, Kieran Joyce, if they can establish dominance the same way over Tipperary's puck out, the way that they established dominance over Dublin's puck out, and get some quality ball into the forward line, I would imagine that Pat Ryan is going to tell the Cork lads the same thing that he told them before the Dublin game. I really, really believe that. I think Cork are going to go for Tip's throat in the first quarter. Really, really believe that, because Cork didn't let Dublin gain any confidence. They didn't let them gain any confidence. They didn't let them believe for a split second that Dublin were going to win. And I truly believe if Cork had been tapping over points and Dublin had got the 2 goals, it would have been tighter. I'm not saying Dublin would have won. I don't think that would have happened. But I think if Dublin had gradually built up the belief that we could win, it would have been more of a problem for Cork. And I think the game last year in the All-Ireland quarterfinal is kind of evidence of that the last 10 minutes were sticky for Cork. They got through it, but it still was one where you thought we need to be better than that if we're going to beat Limerick. Whereas this time it was, don't even mess about. Go for the goals as soon as you can, as often as you can. And I think for Tipperary, Tipper coming into this final off the back, as I said, of 3 very heavy defeats against Cork. And I'm sure they're telling themselves, we can beat this team. We have enough to beat this team. And I truly believe they do. But I think if Cork rattle in 2 goals in the first half, it would be a very impressive Tipperary recover from that and win the match. I think the first 20 minutes, if Tip can get through the first 20 minutes without conceding a goal, it could get interesting. But I think if Cork can get 2 goals in the first half, I think they could steamroll them.
Interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. And we will look at the full forward lines now. Speaking of goals, just for a spoiler alert, the front 3, the full forward line for Cork have scored a combined 12 goals in the championship.
Yeah.
That's very, very, very impressive. Sean O'Malley's in here. Kilkenny started fast against Tip, but the goals got them back into the game. Absolutely. Peter Griffith's in here. In the clutch moments towards the finish line, who will finish stronger? We'll discuss that towards the end in our prediction. But we will look at the full forward lines now and look at this graphic here. So the full forward lines in terms of shot conversion rate, again, this is across every single game in the championship this year for the full forward lines for both sides. So for Cork, Patrick Cork got 3 goals to 50 in the championship, obviously. 53 shots converted out of 72. That's a 74% conversion rate. And people say hockey's slowing down. That is incredible, you have to say. Brian Hayes, 5-8 in the championship. He does score a lot of goals. 13 shots taken out of 22. 59%. I'm sure Brian would be disappointed with that. But at the same time, he does a lot of work off the ball. That is very worth pointing out as well. And the amount of assists that he gets is through the roof, I'd imagine, as well. Alan Connolly is a very, very interesting one. 4-9 in the championship. 13 shots converted out of 18. He gets very few, but does convert it when he gets it. 72%. That's very, very good. You look at Tip, Jason Ford, 3 goals at 44 in the championship, 47 shots converted out of 59, 80%. Why aren't people talking about Jason Ford as Player of the Year candidate? Seriously, that's very, very, very impressive for Jason Ford. John McGrath, 69% conversion, which isn't too shabby either. 5-9-14 in the championship, 19 shots converted out of 28. And finally, Darren McCarthy, yes, there is the hot streak in him with the red card, but 68% conversion rate, 133 in the championship, 34 shots taken out of 50. You look at the forwards there, Tip is very consistent with McGrath and McCarthy, but when you look at Ford there, that's astronomical. But then you look at Horgan and Connolly both getting over 70% conversion rate. That's very, very impressive too.
Yeah, that's seriously impressive. I mean, when you talk about the debates, we were talking a couple of years ago about, should Cork start Patrick Horgan anymore? And the way he's just picked his form back up and maintained being that absolute beating heart of the Cork forward line is absolutely sensational. Like, I mean, he is the fine wine of hurling. He just keeps getting better. I mean, he's like in the same category of TJ Reid and Henry Shefflin and these guys that they didn't slow down with age. They just got better and better, and they kept their levels up, kept their standards up. And I think Hoggy has to be looked at as one of the most professional players we've seen in hurling. Like the fact that, I mean, coming into the Cork team when he did at the end of the 2000s of that decade, and he's just maintained his level ever since. He's been the beating heart of that Cork forward line. Probably since I can remember hurling matches. I mean, I don't really have much memory of them before 2008 because growing up, Dublin was more interested in the football, to be honest. But Jesus, Hoggy has been absolutely sensational so far this year. And Jason Ford, for me, he was one of my favourite players in the 2010s, especially towards 2019. I thought just Jason Ford was awesome, the things he was able to do. He scored 1 goal against Cork in the league. I don't know if you remember this one, but he was running. And I remember being like, it's one of those goals, excuse the fantasy, it was one of those goals where when he scored it, it was a genuine, holy shit. Like, how did he do that? It was against Cork in the league. I don't know if you remember, but it was a game in February. And he was running through, and so I think one of the Cork lads pulled his left hand, and running at full pace, he jabbed the ball up with just one hand on the hurl, and with one hand, jabbed it up and then smacked it into the back of the net with one hand. And it was just off the ground, jab and strike, going at full pace. And I just remember being like, that is a different world level of skill. Like, I can't believe he's just done that. So from that moment, he always stuck with me as a player who was capable of doing incredible things. And he was always pretty underrated, to be honest. He wasn't talked about in the same breath as your Tony Kellys, your Aaron Gallans. He wasn't talked about as being as much of a threat. But when you pull up his stats there for this season, he's been absolutely sensational for Tipperary. And if Tip win this All-Ireland final, there's no question about it. He is going to have an astronomical impact on that game. Hoggy as well is so important to Cork, because if Hoggy has a bad day on the freeze, Cork miss out on a lot of opportunities. Same thing on the Tipperary side of things. But then again, I think Tip are more interchangeable between Darren McCarthy and Jason Ford. I think if one of them's having a bad day, they'll just move to the other. Whereas I feel like Cork are a little bit more, we need Hoggy to be shooting these. So that's a very, very important point as well. I'll be interested to see as well what the directive is. As I was saying, I would be happy to put money on it that I think Cork are going to really go for Tip in the first 20 minutes and go for goals and try establish. Because I think Cork are so desperate to win in All-Ireland that I think if it goes into the final 5 minutes and Tip are right there with them, I think Cork might get nervous in terms of we need to get over the line here. Whereas I feel like Tip, given they've won one in 2019, I know they want to get back to winning ways. Of course they do. But they weren't, if they're being honest with themselves, maybe some Tipperary fans would. Not a lot of people expected Tipperary to be here at the start of the year. And definitely not during the year. I thought it was going to be Cork and Limerick. And I think most people did. So for Tip, they don't have as much to lose by losing this final as Cork do. And I think if it's going into the final 10 minutes, I think Cork will get more nervous than Tip will. I think Tip have nothing to lose and they'll go for it a lot more. So I think the directive might be from Pat Ryan, let's get on top of this early. Let's nip this in the bud. Let's not let them think they have a chance of winning this. Let's lay down the marker here early. Hit 2 goals in the first half. Put it to bed the same way we put the Dublin game to bed. And I think that might be their aim.
Yeah, exactly. So, and speaking of forwards, we'll go on to the next section, and that is matchups, obviously. Now, from what I'm hearing, it's very, very likely Sean O'Donoghue will go on Darren McCarthy again.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Just on that, first of all, before we get into the other matchups. As we said previously, Dara has to be on his best behaviour here. He cannot be goaded into what Sean O'Donoghue's doing. Now, clearly, Sean was trying to get a reaction out of him, and he got it in the game at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Yeah. Darren McCarthy has to keep cool here.
He has to. He can't take the bait the way that he did the last day out. And look, especially with that one, that was just pure inexperience. That was pure inexperience. And to be honest, I'm surprised we don't see it more in hurling. I'm surprised we don't see young lads who burst on the scene getting silly red cards like that more often, because that was just someone hyped up in the moment. Sean O'Donoghue baited him into giving a reaction. He took the bait. Off he goes. And to be honest, I don't like to see that, but he took the bait. He shouldn't have taken the bait, and he did. And he deserved to walk, in my opinion. But then again, I think the point that everyone was making was, you know, if you want to break down, there's multiple incidents, especially in the Cork and Clare game, the first day out, that you can question should they have been red cards, etc., etc., and plenty of hurling games throughout the year. So was McCarthy unlucky that day? Yes, but when you isolate that incident, did he deserve to go? Yes, he did. And he cannot take the bait like that in an All-Ireland final, because let's be honest, what's O'Donoghue going to do in the first 5 minutes? He's going to go over, he's going to stick him 2 hard shoulders and try and wind Darren McCarthy up. And if McCarthy can just hold that first 5 minutes, he needs to just go, throw the hands up and go, I'm not doing nothing. Look at my hands, they're right here. And just don't react. And get into the game and focus on that. Because O'Donoghue is a superb defender. In my opinion, nailed on All-Star. Unless he has a howler in the final, which I don't think he will. But he's been fantastic this year. I would be interested. Would you rather he go on McCarthy as a Cork fan, or would you rather he go on Jason Ford?
Personally, because just because Sean has been our best defender this year, he's been absolutely superb. And because of Jason Ford's stats, I would actually rather him go on Jason Ford.
That's what I was thinking.
Personally.
Because
Yeah.
I feel like Ford on the big day, I think, might be more likely to deliver his A game. I think McCarthy will still do some damage. I think Ford is the really big threat.
Definitely so. And by process of elimination, so we're staying. We think O'Donoghue will be on McCarthy, but from a Cork point of view, you're hoping that he'll be on Jason Ford. But the rumour during the week is Jason Ford will be marked by, I think it's Niall O'Leary, and John McGrath will be marked by Owen Downey. Do you think that will kind of interchange?
Yeah, I think it will. Regardless, I think it's going to interchange either way. I think Cork won't want to let themselves into a situation where people get dragged around, etc., because we could see Jason Ford go out to the half-forward line. He's done that plenty of times, and they've had great success with him out there. I mean, remember Jason Ford at centre-forward against Limerick in the Munster final a few years ago, the damage that he did off Declan Hannon, just peeling off. Maybe they do that. Maybe Tip will put Jason Ford out on Rob Downey and tell him to hang around the way that he did and take shots from the halfway line. I personally could see that as a curveball for Cork, because I mean, if Rob Downey is there, what do? Do you follow Jason Ford around and then potentially leave that centre-half back role open? But then Cork have the option of just slotting Kieran Joyce in there at 6. So Cork are well covered, I think, for that. I think it will be interchangeable, but I think when they're standing beside each other at the throw-in, I think O'Donoghue will be on McCarthy, O'Leary will be on Ford, and Owen Downey will be on John McGrath. I think that's the way it's going to be lining out. But to be honest, if I was Pat Ryan, I would put O'Donoghue on Ford and I would put O'Leary on McCarthy.
Yeah, it should be very interesting in that. But the other side of the pitch as well, the one matchup that I heard is pretty much nailed on is Brian Hayes going to be picked up by Owen Conley. Would you agree with that matchup?
Yeah, I think that one is going to be fascinating because, to be honest, I'm surprised if they do that. I like that Owen Connolly won't be out further because he's been fantastic in the half-back line as well when he's been positioned there. So do you sacrifice that if you're Tipperary?
Yeah.
Because personally, I think we could definitely see Michael Breen going on Hoggy.
That's what I was thinking, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think size-wise, they match up perfectly. Ronan Maher as well, his positioning, will he go on Alan Connolly, do you think? Or will he go out to 6?
Would he stay at 60? I wonder, would he go on Barrett? But he would be more useful in the full back line of Conley, actually.
I think he'd be better at the full back line. I really think that because Cork, as I said, especially in the first 20 minutes, I can see Cork going for Tipperary, and I think they need Ronan Maher there just as a dominant fullback to get them through that first 20-25 minutes.
And then that leaves the other fullback that we didn't talk about, Robert Doyle, who's had an exceptional season for a youngster. I was thinking him on Connolly, but where would you put Robert Doyle then?
Could Robert Doyle pick up Barrett, or is Barrett too quick for him?
I think Barrett's too quick for anybody personally.
Yeah, I mean that's probably fair enough. But Robert Doyle, like another youngster there, like he might have the energy to keep up with Barrett to some degree, but Barrett's pace is electric. I think Decky Dalton going into this final could be a real weapon under the radar as well for Cork because, I mean, in that first half against us in the semi-final, he was awesome. Like people talk about the goals, but every shot that Decky Dalton took in that first half went over the bar. And
just a point on Decky Dalton. Would you put Brian O'Mara on him?
Yes. Yeah. Like Dermot Healy then. Do you know what? Probably put Robert Doyle on Dermot Healy.
Yeah. That's actually a very interesting matchup.
Yeah. And then who does that leave? My brain's going blank. Is that Craig Morgan?
Yeah. Craig Morgan, yeah.
Craig Morgan. Do you know what? That could be because Morgan's pacey enough.
Yeah. And experience. He's, to be fair, has built up a bit of backbone as well over the last few years, Morgan.
That's probably what I go with. I'd probably go Morgan on Barrett, So that's Owen Connolly on Hayes, Ronan Maher on Alan Connolly, Mike Breen on Patrick Horgan, Robert Doyle, on Diarmuid Healy, Brian O'Mara on Decky Dalton, and Craig Morgan on Shane Barrett.
Yeah. And we expect the midfield, not like a David Fitzgerald situation. Oh, please, not that again. But we're expecting the midfield to stay the same. Willie Connors and Conor Stakelum for Tip, Dar Fitzgibbon and Tim O'Mahony for Cork. You're expecting that to stay the same, are you?
Probably. I think there's always the wild card there that Cork could put Dar Fitz at centre forward or wing forward. And maybe that could change it up a little bit. Like, you can't tell me that Diarmuid Healy couldn't do a job at midfield. The athleticism, the height of him. He could definitely. And then if they position Dar Fitz out at wing forward, that would be very interesting. Cork, the other thing as well is Cork have a wealth of options. Like, Cork could introduce anybody into that starting team, and Seamus Hannity could come in, shake the whole thing up. Robbie O'Flynn could come in, shake the whole thing up. Like, I think the guarantees you're going to get off the bench for Cork, the guarantees, Shane Kingston will come off the bench at some point. It just depends when. I think you could see Conor Lahan come in. I think you could see Jack O'Connor come in. And they are all pace and skill merchants for Cork. So they, especially Kingston and Jack O'Connor, are direct runners who hunt for goals. And I think going into the final 10 minutes, they could be crucial. Yeah, I would say probably the midfield will stay as selected, but there is always the threat that Dar Fitz could be positioned elsewhere. And I don't think Tip, with their midfield pairing, have the same threat with those two. I don't think Willie Connors is going to play in the half-forward line. I don't think Conor Stakelum is going to play in the half-forward line. I think they're both going to play in midfield. Yeah.
That's if Conor Stakelum starts. Like, we see Peter Bagari starting in few games for Tipperary. But I think Conor Stakelum, given his performance against Kilkenny, has earned his place in the starting line. That's my personal opinion there. But looking at Tip's half, just one more thing as well, because we did mention the Tip's half forward line in Jake Morris, Andrew Ormond, and Sam O'Farrell against Cork's half back line of Kieran Joyce, Rob Downey, and Mark Coleman. What do you think the matchups will do there? Like, bear in mind, Sam O'Farrell isn't normally an out-and-out forward. He played wing back during the league, so I would imagine he'd like to kind of drift around the middle. But then Ormond and Morris are two lads with eyes for the posts. Mm-hmm. So who goes on them?
Yeah, I feel like looking at the first one there that you mentioned, Sam O'Farrell. Sam O'Farrell, to me, reminds me a bit of Dan McCormack in the role that he plays in that Tipperary half-forward line. Because Dan McCormack would often be in the half-forward line with Noel McGraths, people like that who... John O'Dwyer or players like that who are very skillful, but McCormack would do a different role in that he'd be the workhorse around that half-forward line. I feel like Sam O'Farrell kind of fills out that same criteria. He's not as much of a threat from open play in terms of the shooting that he takes on, which to me says Cork won't put their best defender on him. I could see Coleman going on O'Farrell, and I could see then, because they'll want to keep Rob Downey at 6. They'll want to keep Rob Downey at 6. And I think Jake Morris...
Worth noting as well, I remember the Munster final, Kieran Joyce did a superb job on Cian Lynch. Cian Lynch didn't take a shot in the whole game in the Munster final. That's a credit to Kieran Joyce.
Well, I would put Joyce on Jake Morris, personally. And then I'd leave Rob Downey at 6. And if Andrew Ormond is there, cool. If Jason Ford whips out, cool. I'd leave Rob Downey there. Rob Downey needs to be that anchor in the 6 because he helped to box Dublin in. And I think he could help to box Tipperary in as well.
Very interesting, but we will see the matchups on Sunday, of course. Faithful podcast, obviously, Liam White. Welcome to the pod, man, obviously. Cork to win is his prediction, and Dermot Healy will have a huge game. Obviously, Dermot Healy, he's been waxing lyrical about Dermot Healy for months now, considering like he's an awful man. You would thought it'd be me, but Liam is mad at the Dermot Healy. I don't know what it is.
Liam on my podcast there last week said that he thought Laois were going to win the intermediate LGFA, and there was another one. He expressed sympathy for Westmeath going out with the championship in the intermediate. So what kind of awfully man is this fella?
Jeez, yeah, exactly. Sorry, Liam. Sorry about that. But anyway, we will go to the last facet before the big match prediction. And this is head-to-head. You know, this kind of thing And you said it to me last year, I think Stephen Galodi said it before the football final as well, maybe a few years ago as well, that head-to-head doesn't mean much. So we probably have to look at not the 1917 or 1918 games between the sides, because that's way back. We are looking at the previous meetings really between Cork and Tipperary. And when you looked at actually the last 4 meetings, there's been 1 draw, 3 Cork wins in the championship.
3
Tipperary have won the previous 2 before those 4 games as well. Is that a fair assessment of it? Do Cork have the upper hand over Tipperary in the last few years?
Since this era, like, my thing is I think when you look at the Pat Ryan era, something clicked in the Cork team in that game. Something clicked in that Cork team. Anyway, to answer your question, something clicked that day for Cork against Limerick at Páirc Uí Chaoimh when Hoggy got the penalty, hit the back of the net, and it was one of the best games of hurling I've ever seen. Something clicked that day for Cork. They said themselves the momentum started going full on for Liam McCarthy. And I think if they win the final, I think they can look back at that day against Limerick in the championship last year where they saved themselves and be like, that's where it all started. Because let's be honest, if Cork had lost that game, would Pat Ryan still have the job? We're not 100% sure they would have kept him if Limerick had beat Cork that day. So it's really interesting to see where we've ended up from such a tight match like that. And I think since that's what I would kind of consider to be this new Cork era, where they had just an absolute wave of momentum behind them. Felt like nothing could stop them apart from that final against Clare, which was just a whisker between the 2 teams. But since then, there's been a wave of momentum behind this Cork team like you rarely see. And since that day, anytime they've played Tip, Cork have usually won fairly handy. The thing is that the confidence the Tip will have got from beating Kilkenny the way that they did, from beating Galway the way that they did, from, getting out of the Munster Championship, beating Clare away in Ennis the way that they did, that was some result. Beating Waterford the way that they did. They will get a lot of confidence from those results. Cork cannot take them lightly or they'll be in big, big trouble.
Yeah.
We'll say that to the prediction.
Yes.
I was about to say it.
Here we go. Finally, after more than a few minutes of talking, a lot of minutes, obviously.
Time already, man.
Yeah, let's go. So, the big prediction. The All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship Final, Cork against Tipperary. Reminder, 3:30 on Sunday, live on RT2 and BBC2 Northern Ireland, and on GA Plus as well for those abroad that want to watch the final. Seamus, I'll hand it over to you first.
Okay, my prediction for the All-Ireland Hurling Final 2025 Cork against Tipperary. I believe that Cork are going to win the game by 3 points. I think if you look at the previous meetings between the 2 teams, Cork have won both in the Munster Championship and the League Final at the canter in both games. You have to put an asterisk beside the Munster game because of Darren McCarthy's early red card. But I think when you look at the journey that Cork have been on from when they saved themselves in that Munster clash against Limerick last year in the 2024 championship, they've been on the crest of a wave on a journey that seems destined to end with the Liam McCarthy Cup. Tipperary, I don't think at the start of the season many people believed that Tipperary would be here on All-Ireland Final Day. I think loyal Tipperary fans would have believed in this team, but most of the wider GA world expected it to be a Cork versus Limerick final. It's incredible as the first final we're seeing between Cork and Tip, but I firmly believe you look at the Cork-Dublin game, there was a clear message from Pat Ryan and that Cork management team to go for goal. Go for the jugular, establish dominance quickly. I truly believe that Cork are going to go for goal in the first quarter of this game, in the first 20 minutes. I think if Tip can get through that without conceding a goal, the game could get very interesting because there's more pressure on Cork to win this game than there is pressure on Tip. But I think Cork will hit, I think, at least 2 goals in the first half and establish a bit of dominance over Tipperary. And I think Tip will surge back in the second half, but I think Cork will have done enough. And I pick Cork to get over the line by 3 points. Interestingly enough, if you look at it that way, Tipperary have more All-Irelands in that panel. Noel McGrath has 3, John McGrath has a couple, Jason Ford has a couple, Ronan Marr as well. Like, these players are experienced at getting over the line on big days. But I really believe Cork, if you look at the hurt that they suffered in last year's All-Ireland final, losing the way they did by a point after extra time. They say you need to lose a final to win a final. Cork lost that final heartbreakingly. They've used that as fuel to come back this year, and I think they will put right the wrongs of last year. I've said it from the beginning of the year. At the start of the year, I said to yourself, I said to Aaron, Cork were my pick to win the All-Ireland Hurling Championship in 2025. I'm not changing now. I think Cork win by 3 points. If I'm wrong, I'll hold my hands up. Massive congratulations to Tip if they do prove me wrong. But I just think Cork are too strong this year, and I think they'll get over the line.
Very interesting prediction. Peter saying in here, or Sean O'Malley that's commenting here, but Peter was saying here, all neutrals will be rooting for Hoggy. Not sure about that comment, but we'll see. I think Cork will be carrying...
I should have mentioned that. Hoggy will get his medal. I really believe Hoggy will get his medal. And if Hoggy gets his medal, I'll be so delighted for him, because he's been one of the most professional players in the game and one of the most consistent, brilliant players in the game for the last 15 years. He's been absolutely extraordinary. No player deserves an All-Ireland more than the type of player that Hoggy has been in that period of time, and I'd be delighted for him if he gets over the line. And for Cork as well, because let's be honest, man, Cork as a fan base have been sensational for the GA and sensational for the Hurling Championship over the last couple of seasons. The colour and atmosphere they brought to Croke Park for that All-Ireland semi-final against us was a sight to behold. I mean, the stadium was red in certain patches. It was unbelievable to witness. The way they mix with the Dublin fans is pretty cool, the red and blue dynamic, but Cork as a fan base, you can't question their loyalty. You can't question their ability to be able to light up occasions. And I truly believe Cork fans will light up Croke Park again for this All-Ireland final. If they win the All-Ireland, I'll be delighted for yourself. I'll be delighted for Dan. I'll be delighted for all the Cork fans, because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Sean is saying in here, I think Cork will be carrying more momentum going into the final, the way they've been building over the last 2 years and how they've got to the pinnacle without winning. It feels now is their time. Liam White is saying in here, Cork by 7. Don't think it'll be convincing as that. But anyway, Sean is saying here, and with Killa being the song of the summer just feels right. Absolutely. Before my prediction, I have to say, for the first time in a long while, I have to say, bravo, RT. What an ad for that All-Ireland Final. It's absolutely classic. And yeah, that song Killa has just captured the imagination of the whole country, I have to say. It's been brilliant.
Yeah. No, okay, you're right there, Sean. With Killa being the song of the summer, I mean, it absolutely is right. And as I was saying there, I would be delighted for Hoggy. I would be delighted for the Cork fans and the way that they've travelled and supported their team home and away. They've lit up the championship over the last 2 seasons, and it would be amazing if Cork can get over the line. And as a dub, wish them all the best, which is saying something coming from one capital to another.
Exactly. And here's my prediction. I think Cork will edge it by 3 points, but I am wary, of course. Tipperary, never count them out. Like I did say it before the All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny. I said Tipperary were going to be up for that game and they were going to win. I've seen a post on the Premier View podcast before that game saying the amount of pundits that backed against Tipperary. I was one of a few that actually backed for Tipperary to say they would win the game because of their threats, because of Jake Morris, because of Andrew Ormond, because of John McGrath, Jason Ford shooting accuracy. They've been absolutely outstanding throughout the whole championship. And as Seamus said there, if they win the All-Ireland on Sunday, credit to them. They have been a brilliant story in the championship. The way they recovered from last season, you have to give them a lot of credit for that. But, this is a big but, I think this is Cork's time. They lost the All-Ireland final last year. They're going to be gung-ho to go on and win the All-Ireland, not just for themselves, not just for the parish forevermore like in the song Killa, but for Hoggy. This guy has been going for an All-Ireland for so many seasons now, when coming up so close to getting over the finishing line. He has lost 3 All-Ireland finals. I don't think he'll lose a 4th. And Seamus Harney and Conor Lehan. These guys have given everything to Cork hurling over the last few years. And you have to mention Pat Ryan as well. The way he's transformed this Cork team from being kind of clinging on in many ways, in trying to stay among All-Ireland quarterfinals, All-Ireland semi-finals, to being absolute contenders. And Pat Ryan deserves a lot of credit for that, I have to say as well. I think Cork will win the game. I think they'll do it by 3 points. It should be very, very close as well. I don't think it'll be as convincing as the game in Munster. Tipperary are much better. And I think they will prove that on Sunday. You could see a scenario where Tip are ahead at halftime or something like that. But I think the sheer determination will get Cork over the line this one and win them the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship for the first time in 20 years. Peter Griffin is saying here, Killa replacing the Banks of the Lee. Absolutely. And before that was After All by the Franklin Walters. So a lot of songs be, yeah.
We have to mention we have to mention how emotional it would be for Pat Ryan to get over the line, considering how he lost his brother earlier this year. Like that, would be, so emotional. Like we saw in the Munster final when the game went to penalties, how Pat Ryan looked up to the sky. I mean, it seemed like he was looking up for someone to look down on him, and it would be really emotional if they got over the line. I've no doubt he'll have his brother in his heart now this weekend.
Absolutely so. And obviously, condolences again to the Ryan family at the loss of Ray Ryan earlier in the year as well. And hopefully, Cork can get over the line in honour of Ray, obviously, who was a former Cork player as well back in the day as well. Anyway, we have both predicted Cork will win the All-Ireland Hurling Championship final. We will have to see what happens, which will be an absolute thriller. Yeah, both by 3 points as well. It will be tight, a grain of rice and all that. Before we get into the LGFA, one more comment in here. Pat Ryan, the faithful podcast, Liam White, saying Pat Ryan deserves this more than anyone. Seamus is absolutely right. Absolutely. Peter Griffin is saying here, superb preview, lads. Great in-depth analysis. Enjoy the final in Up Cork for Hoggy and Pat and his brother. Absolutely. But the preview isn't done yet, Peter, because there was 2 LGFA Semi Finals to look at as well. So we'll look at this is double header at Glennis, O'Connor Park in Tullamore. So I know we'll Liam go to these 2 games. Some very interesting games here, and it's right on his doorstep. So the first LGFA semi-final is Kerry against Meath on Saturday at 5:15 and shown live on TG Car as always with the LGFA Championship. And we will look as always with Kerry scores and the Meath scores and their journeys to the final. So we'll start off with the Kingdom of Kerry, obviously. All-Ireland champions from last season, now managed by Mark Burke for Kerry. They won the Munster Championship by beating Cork 113 to 10 points. They beat Waterford closely, obviously 2-9 to 111. Drew with Tipperary 1-6 apiece, but that was a game that was a dead rubber. But then against Waterford, again, beating them in a close encounter 2-6 to 10 points. Beat Mayo on the group stage in the All-Ireland Series 13 points to 1-4. Beat Cork in Super Valley Park again 5-7 to 2-9. Then beat Kildare in the quarterfinal of the LGFA Championship 3-12 to 11 points. They've averaged a score 2-9 per game and conceded an average of 1-8 per game. And look at scores there, it is largely dominated there by Siar Froché and Daniel O'Leary, who have got 6 goals and 23 points and 3 goals and 17 points, respectively. Rachel Dwyer up there with 2-6 as well. Niamh Carmody with 1-4. Queeve Evans up there with 5 points. And you can see the rest of the scores on the Kerry list there. Look at Meath's journey to the final, to the semi-final, should I add. In the Leinster Championship, Meath lost to Dublin first of all, 2-10 to 1-6. Beat Kildare 2-14 to 1-6 in a tight 1-16 in a tight encounter there, but lost to Dublin and Croke Park in the Leinster final 2-13 to 1-12. They drew with Armagh in the first game of the All-Ireland Series 3-8 to 11, but then beat Kildare 7 points to 4 to progress to the quarterfinals, where they beat Tipperary comprehensively enough 2-17 to 1-6. They've averaged a score of 112 per game and conceded an average of 111 per game. And you look at the Meath scores, again, like Kerry, dominated by 2 players in Emma Duggan, who was 228, and Vicky Wall, who was 2 goals and 10 points. Credit has to go to Niamh Galogly as well with 2 goals and 3 points, Marion Farrelly with 8 points, Ciara Smith with 7, and you look down the list at the Meath scores there. So what are you thinking about this game, Seamus? Kerry going in as obvious favourites, but can Meath put off a shock here?
Yeah, no, this rivalry is really, really interesting because it's the 3rd year in a row now, or excuse me, the 4th year in a row that they've met in the championship. So the rivalry kind of kicked off 2022 when Meath won back-to-back All-Irelands, beating Kerry in that All-Ireland final of 2022, and they swept them out the gate. Then it was 2023 when Kerry beat Meath in the All-Ireland quarter-final. But yeah, so Meath beat Kerry in that 2022 final, making it back-to-back All-Irelands. Then Eamon Murray left, and that was the end of the Eamon Murray era with Meath. So Meath went into a bit of a new era there, and it was Kerry who brought the Meath journey to an end in 2023 in the All-Ireland quarter-final stage. And then last year, again, it was exactly the same. All-Ireland quarter-final win for Kerry against Meath. Kerry advanced to the semi-finals and eventually won the All-Ireland last year. Finally winning their first All-Ireland since 1993. Since then, a lot's happened. Like Kerry won the league at a canter that day against Armagh. That was a crazy game. I was at that game. That was just a proper case of everything Kerry did ended up in the back of the net, it felt like. And everything Armagh did ended up like hitting the crossbar or the post or like the goalkeeper saved it. Cayley Cronin stopped one on the line. And speaking of Cayley Cronin, we're going to the players that Kerry lost. Louise Nevera-Hurtig, a generational player, one of the best we've ever seen in the LGFA. She retires at the end of last season after finally winning the Brendan Martin. Emma Dineen steps away from the panel. Hannah O'Donoghue steps away from the panel. And then one of the most important players throughout the league, Cayley Cronin, who in my opinion is the best defender in the country, goes to Australia, and now she's gone. There are other players who have departed the Kerry panel over the past 2 seasons, like Paris McCarthy and players like that, who are not involved in the Kerry team anymore. Julie O'Sullivan as well. When you look at the players that they could have in there, there's 5 or 6 that would be right in contention for a starting position. So the fact that they're still at this level is unbelievable. Meath, on the other hand, have got a lot of their big guns back. Vicky Wall returned to the panel. Shauna Ennis is back now, starting games. And she was so important to their back-to-back All-Ireland wins. I mean, she captained them to both of them. And then on top of that, you've got players like Niamh Glogly, who has been absolutely phenomenal. She won player of the match in the last day out against Tipperary. You've got people like Marion Farley, who's got better and better year on year from Meath. And she is a direct scoring threat from midfield. She usually chips in with a couple of points a game. But the key threats, there's 2 very obvious ones for either side, as you highlighted. When Louise left, Kerry needed players to step up into those shoes, and it has largely been Daniel O'Leary and Sheaf Roche, who have both been phenomenal. Sheaf Roche got a hat-trick in that Munster final against Cork. She was electric. Daniel O'Leary has also been superb. Whereas for me, it's Emma Duggan and Vicky Wall. And what's different here is it's always been Emma Duggan and Vicky Wall. It was Emma Duggan and Vicky Wall when they won the back-to-back All-Irelands. It's still Emma Duggan and Vicky Wall now. And the question is, have Kerry improved enough with the All-Ireland to be able to beat Meath at their best? Because I don't think Meath were fully at their best the last time the Kerry beat them.
Very, very interesting point there. And it should be a very interesting game when you look at these 2 sides straight into the final. Obviously, Kerry winning the Munster Championship, Meath losing the Leinster Championship, but they were obviously getting the players back in. As you mentioned there, Shauna Ennis coming back through the All-Ireland series as well. But the fact that Meath have only averaged a win margin of a point and Kerry by 4 points, may I add, will that tip the scales, or is that kind of the indication that Kerry have played easier opposition in a way?
No, definitely. Kerry have not played easier opposition. Like, I mean, I would argue Cork and Kildare, if they played each other, that would be a very even match. And I'd argue that you just need to look at Dublin and Waterford drawing in the championship down in Dublin, where Dublin were very lucky to get that draw, might I add. That showcases that the competitiveness of their games have been very, very similar. The team level that they've been up against has been very similar. I think Kerry this season so far have proven that their All-Ireland win was absolutely no fluke. It is the culmination of a long journey. And then when a team does a journey like that, when a team goes on a long journey where it seems like they're on the run for an All-Ireland for years and years and years, when they finally get there, finally get over the line to win an All-Ireland title, sometimes it can be almost a kiss of death. Sometimes it can be like, that's it, show's over. Like, how many times have we seen that where teams finally get to the Holy Grail and then just disappear off the face of the earth? Like, that's happened before. It's showing signs with Kerry that is not the case here. It's showing signs that this is only the beginning of something. Now, it will be interesting to see, because remember the example that I gave to you about how when teams usually bridge gaps, that it doesn't tend to be that they go back to back. The LGFA is actually different. For some reason, if you look at the history books, that Cork team that won 11 All-Irelands in 12 years, obviously that's a generational Cork team. But when they finally bridged the gap, they went back to back. When Mayo finally bridged the gap at the start of the century, they went back to back. Like, there's plenty of examples. When Dublin won their first All-Ireland since 2010, in 2017, Dublin went on to do 4 in a row. Like, there's plenty of examples of when... And Meath won their first All-Ireland in 2021 and went back to back. There is a lot of examples that contradict what we see in men's Gaelic football. So does that bode well for Kerry? We'll see. And to be honest, I think they are favourites for this one. I've seen enough from them to tell me that they're firing up top. I think there's no way that Chief Roche doesn't score a goal in this one. There's no way it doesn't happen. She's absolutely in red hot form right now. Danielle O'Leary is absolutely unmarkable right now. I see more threats in the Kerry forward line, to be honest. I think if Kerry can get a grip on Emma Duggan, and I think that's where the Kaylee Cronin absence could really come into play. Because I think if Kaylee Cronin was playing, I think she could pick up Vicky Wall and potentially neutralise her a little bit. But the fact that she's not, I think Vicky Wall could be crucial in this game.
Yeah.
Right. Prediction time.
Exactly. I'll predict first, just for a change. I'm going to say Kerry, but it'll be slight. I think it'll be about 4 or 5 points, that's it.
I'm going Kerry by 2.
Yeah. Should be a very interesting game, definitely, and it will be live at TG Car, as will this game at Glennis O'Connor Park. That is Dublin against Galway on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Obviously, the Ireland LGFA Semi Final as well, and we will look at the scores and journey to the final for both Dublin and Galway. So starting off with the Dubs, obviously in the Leinster Championship, they did beat Meath on the first day out, 210 to 1-6, and they beat Kildare 412 to 1-5, and then beat Meath in the Leinster Final as well, 213 to 112. They're only blipping the road to draw against Waterford 113 apiece, where Waterford were very, very unlucky not to win that game. But the goals came flowing in the next game. 8 goals and 18 points to 7 points against Leitrim, and then 315 to 7 points against Cork. Amazing. 11 goals in 2 games. They've averaged a score of 315 per game, while scoring 20 goals and 81 points combined. That's absolutely incredible. And 1-7 on average they've conceded, and Dublin obviously as well. Look at the scores here, and you look at the individual scoring goals there. Hannah Tyrrell, 7 goals and 27 points, 3 goals from play. Kate Sullivan has 4 goals and 10 points. Niamh Heatherton has 2 goals and 14. You've Chloe Darby there with 1-8, Cara Road 1-6, Sophie McIntyre with 1-3. You can see down the list of Dublin scores there. Galway are on a serious winning run at this present moment in time, including the league. They have won a combined 14 games in a row, Galway, this year, which is absolutely incredible. They started off the championship this year by beating Leeds for 2 goals and 22 points to 5 points, beat Mayo 213 to 9 points, and then beat Mayo again 16 points to 1-4. Beat Tipperary the Ireland 113 to 7 points, beat Donegal 111 to 1-2, and did beat Waterford 118 to 112. A result that could swing it in Galway's favour, considering Dublin drew to Waterford. Galway have averaged a score of 116 per game and conceded an average of 1-5. So they average a winning margin of 11 points to add to their 14-game winning run as well. We look at Galway's scores here, and they are spread out really. You look at Olivia Dibley there with 20 points, Kate Slevin with 2 goals and 13 points. Roisin Nenner was scoring for fun in the league, but she's only the 3rd top scorer for Galway with 15 points. Leanne Cohen and Alva Davert with 1-8 each. Ava Noon with 1-7. Andrea Trill with 1-4. And you can see down the list in terms of scores for Galway there. So you look at all them facets, Seamus. Like, Galway are in very, very good form, as evident at the moment. But Dublin are scoring goals for fun. 20 goals in the championship. That's incredible.
Oh, it's absolutely sensational. I mean, on top of that, just the form of the top 2 that you were mentioning there, Hannah Tyrrell and Kate Sullivan there, have been absolutely incredible form. Is Niamh Heatherton's sister John Heatherton? Yes, John Heatherton and Niamh Heatherton are brother and sister. So very, very popular family there for Dublin GA. And I know Niamh, lovely, lovely person, and just a sensational GA family. Like, there's no question about it. I mean, the impact that they've had on Dublin GA, especially this year, has been tremendous. So I really, really do believe, looking at this game, it's like, what would you rather have? So Dublin have especially two sensational forwards right now in the form of their lives in Kate Sullivan and in Hannah Tyrrell. I think Kate Sullivan picked up player of the match there the last day out against Cork, hit the back of the net with a lobbed goal. It must be said when Cork were pushing up looking for scores themselves. But on top of that, she got a hat-trick against Leitrim, and she's looked absolutely fantastic so far this year. She got the equaliser at the buzzer against Waterford on the first day out to save our bacon. Hannah Tyrrell got the crucial goal in the Leinster final when we overcame Meath. Got that crucial goal in the first half. So there's no question about it. Both of them are in sensational form. But then the obvious thing is both of them are the obvious threats for Galway. And Galway, if you look at the other side, Galway have just an abundance of threats across the pitch. Me and you were saying this, that Roisin Leonard is, their key player, their go-to, everything like that, scoring for fun in the league, scoring for fun in last year's championship. She hasn't started most of the games so far in this championship, and they haven't even batted an eyelid. Someone else has just picked up the mantle. Whether it's Kate Slevin, whether it's Olivia Dively, whether it's Andrea Trill, these players step up and they chip in. They get involved. Alva Davern's another one that you can never discount. She always manages to pop up with a goal at a crucial stage. They have a lot of threats. Even players like Lindsay Noon, who hit the back of the net for Cork in the league, for Galway in the league final against Cork. And she's only played a small part in the championship. Like, it's ridiculous, the talent that Galway have. And the other thing as well is Galway have kind of, in their games, it's like teams don't have a chance against them. If you look at the way that they've got it, Galway, it's almost like, like a boa constrictor style, where they just slowly just suffocate the team. You don't score a lot against Galway. Like you said it there, the average they've conceded is a goal and 5. And then for the average that they've scored is 116. So they have an average winning margin of 11 points. And I'd be very interested to see how that extends into the league. Is it any different when it comes to league games? Probably not that different. There was that sense in the league final against Cork that Galway's defence was just too strong. They weren't going to give away goals. They weren't going to let Cork back into the game. And when you look at players in that Galway defence, players like Sarah Nilinchik, players like Nicola Ward, players like Captain Kate Geraghty there, a cornerback who's a fantastic defender for Galway. Like, it's no wonder that Galway's defence is so tight. And when they have the forwards up top that they do, they have a really, really good recipe. And if you look back to last year, Galway were the team that went away to Parnell Park and knocked Dublin out of the championship. Mm-hmm. So they do not fear Dublin in the slightest. And now they're on neutral venue.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned the league there. I did do average stats before the league final. Before the league final, Galway's average score in the league was 3 goals and 15 points. Their average concession rate was 7 points. So that's an average winning margin of 17 points.
There you go. They've been ruthless this year.
Yeah.
I watched the Galway Tipperary game in full. And it was just like Tipperary had no idea how to even try and get scores against Galway. There was never a hint of a goal coming for the entire game.
When you look at it as well, Donegal only got 1-2 against them.
Yeah, like they just... And the goal as well was like just Galway switched off for a second. But in general, their defence is probably the best in the country, to be honest.
And that's down to the likes of Sarah Nilinchik, Kate Geraghty, I'd imagine, like those two in particular have really stood up.
Yeah, Kate Geraghty, she's the captain of the team. And so far this season, you were mentioning Division 2 champions, Connacht champions as well. They've had that province on lockdown now for the past few seasons. And they seem determined as well to right the wrongs of last year. They didn't do themselves justice in that All-Ireland final. They got blown away by Kerry, to be honest. But it's kind of similar to... It's a similar situation to like when Limerick swept Cork out the gate in 2021. It's like you left that day being like, they're not as bad as that. There's not as much of a gap between the teams as it looked like it was today. So I think if Kerry and Galway meet in the final again, which could very well happen, it won't go the way that it went last year.
And the more we talk about averages and defence and attack for Galway, who had the spread of scores and the 14-game winning run at this present moment in time, despite Dublin's goal-scoring exploits, I actually fancy Galway for this one. I don't know what you think yourself, Seamus, but Galway are in serious form. I don't think they're in the mood to stop.
The one thing is as well is when you're looking at the way that the teams have been winning, when you look at the way that Dublin have been winning, 8-18 against Leitrim, cool. It happened that day. It was an amazing performance, amazing victory. But that happened to Leitrim against Waterford too. And they were soundly beaten by Donegal as well in the relegation playoff. And they were soundly beaten by Mayo too. So that game, that doesn't happen every day out. 8-18 does not happen every day out. Now, you can look at it and you say Dublin have been racking up goals in pretty much every game they play, but they have not come up against a defence as good as this Galway defence. The closest to it in terms of being defensively sound is Waterford. And we saw how we had to bail ourselves out of jail with the last kick of the game against Waterford. And Waterford went away to Galway, and Galway really showed their experience in that game. Didn't, again, shut down Waterford's key attackers and got over the line. And I think I worry when you look at how obvious our key threats are. If they put someone like Sarah Lynchig on Hannah Tyrrell, if they put someone like Kate Geraghty on Kate Sullivan, they could be tamed just a little bit. And if they can tame our two key attackers, they have about 7 or 8 that we need to watch down the other end. I don't like picking against Dublin, but I truly believe Galway are out on a mission this year to claim the Brendan Martin and put right the wrongs of last year. And I see them destined for a place in the final. I think it's going to be a repeat of the All-Ireland final last year. I'm going to shade it to Galway by 2 points.
I am as well. I just feel like this Galway team's on a winning run. Their defence is improving. Their attack is absolutely scintillating at this present moment in time without Roisin Leonard starting much games in the championship in recent times, which is absolutely incredible in its own right. So Galway, I think, they're on a mission this year. They got hammered at the All-Ireland final last year. That doesn't happen normally to Galway. They will be back for vengeance, I'd imagine.
You have to mention Dublin don't have Mick Bowen as manager anymore.
Yeah.
It's Paul Casey and Derek Murray. It's a new team to some degree. It's a new era. Dublin don't feel the same, I would say, the same drive to put right the wrongs of last year as Galway do.
And the thing is as well, if memory serves me correct, in the league, you lost to Kildare and Armagh.
Yeah. Whereas Galway have been touched all year.
Yeah, exactly. John Doherty's come in with a comment in here. Cork by 8. Go back to we discussed the Ireland Hurling Final, John, but obviously we did discuss the LGFA Semi Finals. We're both predicting Galway and Kerry to make it to the final. Just before we end the podcast, there's the Premier Junior Camogie Semi Finals as well happening this weekend. It's a double header in Kingspan Breffni in Cavan. So Laois are playing Wicklow at 1 o'clock, and Armagh are playing Roscommon at 3 o'clock. Now, I think Laois will probably win the first game. Seamus, Laois got beaten by Tipperary's second team last year in the Premier Junior. So either did like Suze did an and Amy Collier in very good form at this present moment in time. You would expect Laois to win that game. Armagh and Roscommon's an interesting one. Armagh only lost 1 game in the league phase. That was to Laois. Roscommon got to the final of the Division 3A league final in the very Camogie League, losing to Laois as well. So this is going to be a very tight game to call. But I think Armagh have done better in the championship than Roscommon have. So I'll tip it to Armagh, but that's ultimately a 50-50 in my opinion, James. But what do you think you owe them 2 games?
Yeah, I think on the first game that you were mentioning there, I think Laois are the favourites. I mean, when you look across not just the Prem Junior Championship, but the league, as you were saying as well, like the Division 3A, Laois winning that, they seem to be a little bit ahead of the rest of the teams in this pack. And I think whether it's Armagh, whether it's Roscommon in the final against them, I would still favour it to Laois to get over the line, regardless of who comes through against them. I've been slightly more impressed with the results that Armagh have been putting up in the championship so far. I think Roscommon, obviously, we saw that they really put it up to Laois when they came up against them. But I'm going to shade it to Armagh slightly. And I'm not very confident in that prediction as well, because I think they're at very similar levels. But I just think Laois are a step ahead of the championship right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there will be a final in the Premier Junior Camogie Championship, but that will be a weekend only with Camogie, and then LGFA is the same as well as soon as the All-Ireland football final ends, unless there's a replay in the hurling, which we'll see what happens in terms of that. Obviously, geez, another day out, that'll be absolutely incredible. But that is the end of the podcast. after 1 hour 45 minutes, mostly discussing the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship Final between Cork and Tipperary. That is the podcast here. Thanks to Seamus for coming on. Thanks to everybody that commented. Thanks to Capture Let for sponsoring today's show once again as well. Thank you to all the people that commented on the podcast as well. So thank you to John Doherty. Thank you to the favourite podcast, obviously, Liam White. Another Liam that commented at the start of the show. Sean O'Malley, Rudders, and of course, Peter Griffin, who was on fire with the comments tonight as well. Again, thanks to Capture Legs. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Ring the bell for any notifications on any videos coming up on the channel as well. Next week, it is the All-Ireland Football Final preview between Donegal and Kerry, so cannot wait for that. And then in the next few weeks, there's LGFA Camogie, then gradings, and that'll be the end of the inter-county season. And then we go to club again. But that'll be in the next few weeks, obviously. But for now, thanks to everybody that viewed. Thanks to everybody, the commenters. Thanks to Capture Legs for sponsoring. Thanks to Seamus for hopping on tonight. Enjoy the All-Ireland Final at the weekend between Cork and Tipperary. We'll see you next week. Take care.